James, good morning. As always, most welcome.
Good morning. It's, as always, a pleasure to be with you.
So the geopolitical stakes could not be higher in terms of Sunday's Turkish elections.
Indeed. This is the most important election in recent Turkish history, in which presumably President Recep Tayyip Erdogan is going to be fighting for his political life. It's a very important symbolic fight also because this year is the 100th year, the centenary of the creation of the modern Turkish Republic, carved out of the ruins of the Ottoman Empire. And the opposition for the first time has a real chance of winning. Expectations are that will lead to a significant change in economic policies, in a rollback of restrictions on democracy, and in foreign policies in terms of a more welcoming attitude towards the European Union, United States, and NATO, as opposed to Turkey's current emphasis on Russia and China.
Is it most likely that there would be a rerun?
Analysts at this moment predict, after the withdrawal yesterday of a presidential candidate, that the opposition candidate could win this in the first round. Time will tell. We'll know on Sunday evening.
We certainly will. Stalled Sudanese ceasefire talks test the limits of de-escalation in the Middle East?
Indeed. Now, there's been a slight development. The parties are negotiating under U.S. and Saudi auspices in Jeddah, and they have just come to an agreement to protect civilians. That's an agreement to protect civilians, not an agreement to halt the fighting. And that shows just how difficult de-escalation of the tensions in the Middle East is, particularly because you have various parties supporting various sides in the conflict in Sudan. The Saudis, now all of the foreign parties, Saudi Arabia, the United States, Egypt, and the United Arab Emirates want to see the fighting end. Nonetheless, the Saudis are more closely aligned with the Sudanese military, as is Egypt, and the United Arab Emirates has very close ties to the Rapid Support Forces. So this is a clear example that de-escalation is a much harder road to travel than simply reestablishing, for example, relations.
Now, like Sudan, Israeli-Palestinian hostilities demonstrate that stability in the Middle East requires solutions, not band-aids.
Indeed. So we've seen the escalation of violence between Israel and the Palestinians, particularly Islamic Jihad, in the Gaza Strip in recent days. And what that tells you is that trying to manage conflicts is easier said than done. De-escalation and stability is really only produced when you solve conflicts. And that has not been at the core of what we've seen over the last couple of years with countries like the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Iran, Turkey, Israel, improving relations with one another so that they can focus on economics, but in fact are trying to put conflicts in the freezer, and conflicts don't like to be put in the freezer. Now,
President Bashar al-Assad's return to the Arab League constitutes a victory for Syria and Iran.
Indeed. So Bashar al-Assad is being returned to the Arab fold. He has been invited to attend next week's Arab League summit in Riyadh. This all despite the massive human rights abuse and war crimes that he committed during the more than a decade-long civil war in Syria. And of course, he was backed by Iran and Russia in this conflict. And so his legitimization is a success for Russia and Iran. The conservative Arab states, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, hope that investment will persuade Bashar al-Assad to loosen his ties to Iran, will persuade him to crack down on drug smuggling out of Syria, and lead to a return of Syrian refugees. The problem with all of that is that it's Bashar al-Assad who has the leverage at this point, rather than the conservative Gulf states, and his track record is one which doesn't create confidence that he will abide by agreements.
All right, James, as always, we thank you for your time.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Listeners, you can catch James's articles and subscribe to his newsletter via his website, www.jamesmdorsey.net. Dorsey.